Hey guys, welcome back to a new video on the Bill Seaver channel. Happy Friday. And today we're going to be doing a top 10. We're taking a break from the tier list today. We're going to be doing a top 10 Sesame Street Muppets list. So, Sesame Street and the Muppets have always been a special place in my childhood. I've enjoyed both franchises, Sesame Street especially. If somebody asked me which show that I preferred over the two, it would probably be Sesame Street, just because I just understood the humor a little bit more. I kind of related to the characters a little bit more. And of course, this is the show that got me into my love for puppetry. So today I'm going to go through 10 characters that I've personally enjoyed over the years on Sesame Street, whether they were, whenever they appeared on screen, I've always had a good time with these characters. Some of these characters, I tried to make sure these are all main characters, and so I had to make sure these were characters that appeared very regularly, and so on. So hopefully you guys do enjoy. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new here, and comment down below who's your favorite Sesame Street Muppet. And with that out of the way, let's get into this top 10. Starting off at the number 10 spot, we've got Snuffy. Just another disclaimer, if you hear noise in the background, it's my cat. She's being kind of distracting right now. But Snuffy, the one thing I've always enjoyed about Snuffy, I think he's a very underrated character. And I've always found Snuffy a very interesting character. The first few seasons of the show that he appeared on, a lot of people assumed that, or thought that he was Big Bird's imaginary friend. If you watch the first, obviously Snuffy's always seen with Big Bird. The two are like two peas in a pot. Like, you can't separate the two of them. But later on throughout the show, Snuffy does get revealed that he is not a part of Big Bird's imagination, and he does exist. Probably, I think they did this to make kids feel like, I'm not really too sure what the message was. Probably, kids with imaginary friends, obviously. Here's my cat again being distracting. But yeah, Snuffy, number 10. The reason why he's this low on the list is because he's not my all-time favorite character, but I've always had a smile whenever he appears on screen. Coming in at number 9, this may surprise some people, but it is Roosevelt Franklin. So Roosevelt Franklin, this is going to be a controversial one, considering the fact that he has not appeared on the show since the early 70s. So the early days of this channel, again, it was supposed to be a Muppet channel, and I was supposed to do a series called Muppet Vaults. And the first episode of the show, which actually appeared on YouTube, I'll put a link to the first episode in the description box below. Roosevelt Franklin was a very interesting character. If you want to hear a more in-depth description of Roosevelt Franklin, watch that video. But pretty much he was kind of like an African-American kind of character that was on the show. A lot of people enjoyed him, and a lot of people absolutely despised him. Apparently, like, he was seen as a stereotype, and pretty much he was kicked off the show. I think he was retired from the show after, I believe, after season 5. Yeah, Sesame Street was still very new at the time. But overall, Roosevelt Franklin, I think he's a very great character. I've always enjoyed him. Apparently, he's made cameos on the show, like in the later seasons throughout the show, like during the 50th anniversary special and stuff, which I have not watched. But yeah, apparently, like, him and a bunch of other, like, older characters ended up making appearances on the show. Moving on to number 8, we've got Herry Monster, performed by Jerry Nelson. I forgot to mention the performers. So the performer for Snuffy, I believe, is Marty Robinson, who is known for performing Herry Monster. Roosevelt Franklin was performed by the first actor that played Gordon. I have no idea what his name is. And then you got Herry Monster, who I believe was played by Jerry Nelson. Jerry Nelson is a great Muppet performer, and this is one of my all-time favorite characters that he plays. Also, I apologize if I keep saying throughout my sentences. It's just, I don't know, it's just, I don't know what to talk about. I don't really have a script in front of me. I'm just doing this on the top of my head. But Herry Monster, he's a great character. He's a very lovable character. I'll admit, when I first started watching Sesame Street, like in the early days of me watching the show, I used to find Herry Monster a little scary at times. But then over the years, I learned to tolerate him, and then over the years, I learned to love him. A lot of my favorite sketches of Herry Monster is when he's with Grover. And you'll see Grover is on the list. You'll see him on here pretty soon. Yeah, Herry Monster, he's a great character. Moving on to number 7, we've got Kermit the Frog. So I know this is another controversial one. Some people disagree with me. Do people even consider Kermit a Sesame Street Muppet? I mean, Sesame Street aired before the original Muppet Show did. My cat's being a nuisance. Anyway, so Kermit the Frog, he's probably up there as one of my all-time favorite Muppets. The reason why he's not in the top 5 is just because, well, I think there's like 5 Muppets that I believe are better than him. It's not that he's a bad character. Kermit really is not a bad character. He is a good character. So if you remember, a while back I did a video. It was like a BuzzFeed quiz video where I took like a quiz, like a survey thing, and it was talking about like which fictional character do I relate to the most, and I did it for the Muppets, and I did one for Sesame Street too. And for the Muppet one, I actually got Kermit the Frog, which I found pretty surprising at the time. But after I uploaded that video, I've seemed to learn that that's pretty accurate. Kermit, he's a leader on. He's not really a leader on on Sesame Street. On Sesame Street, he's more of a teacher. He's more of a mentor. And he is kind of a mentor on the Muppet Show, but he's mainly the leader of the show. He's the guy that's behind everything. He's very relatable to Jim Henson, who, of course, performed the original performer for Kermit. And, Kermit was pretty much the Muppet version of Jim Henson. And you know what? I'm going to do a different video talking about Kermit the Frog and Jim Henson. But he's number 7. I feel like you can't have a Muppet list without Kermit the Frog. Moving on to number 6, we've got Count Von Count. This is probably the most popular Jerry Nelson character, or besides Herry Monster. Count Von Count, if I don't understand, I can't believe people think he's scary. Like, he's if you find Count scary, I'm not going to judge you. But, it's totally fine. You can be scared of whoever you want. But Count Von Count, I don't know. It's just I've always enjoyed numbers. My favorite segments on Sesame Street were like the letter of the day and the number of the day. I've always liked the number of the day. I've always enjoyed numbers. Count Von Count, is the reason why I've enjoyed numbers, even though I don't enjoy math as much as now. Count Von Count, he's probably the one that got me into counting. My favorite sketch of his, I think he's like out on the, like going to a market or out on the streets, and he's counting potatoes, and there's like a policeman that keeps following him, thinking that he's up to no good. But Count Von Count, number 6 on my list. Moving on to number 5, we've got Jim Henson's, my favorite character that Jim Henson performs besides Kermit, and that is Guy Smiley, everybody's favorite game show host. Guy Smiley, he appeared on the early days of Sesame Street. I think he was there for the first two decades. So like throughout the 70s and the 1980s. However, I don't really think Guy Smiley's on Sesame Street anymore. If he is, please let me know. I have seen some clips of him on the early days of Sesame Street, or on the modern day episodes of Sesame Street. So I'm guessing what happened was, obviously after Jim Henson passed in 1990, like a huge chunk of his characters ended up being retired. Kermit was included. Guy Smiley was one of those characters, and you know what? I've always found him funny. I've always found him really charming. I've always found him to be a really great character and a really great game show host too. Moving on to number 4, I'm going to wrap this video up real quick. My pets are driving me crazy. It is Oscar the Grouch, performed by Carol Spinney. He was the best. Oh, and also, I believe Eric Jacobson, who plays most of Frank Oz's characters, he actually took over for Oscar the Grouch. He took over for Guy Smiley, too, and I think he does a pretty good Oscar. He has a decent Guy Smiley, but actually, I don't think his Guy Smiley is that great, but you know what? According to most of the Muppet characters, or the Muppet cast, you know, it doesn't really matter how the voice sounds. It's just, it doesn't matter about the voice. It's just matter, as you know, it still relates to the character still has the same original charm. Oscar's always had that same original charm throughout his tenure on Sesame Street. The man lives in a trash can, for crying out loud. I remember seeing like a lot of memes and theories about him. Yeah, like his trash can's like an underground like basement, or Oscar the Grouch is like a serial killer or whatever, and he hides all his bodies down there in his trash can. Or, you know, Oscar is like a very rich man, but people don't know it, and he just prefers to live in a trash can. I don't know, man. I've heard a lot of like theories and myths about Oscar the Grouch, and a lot of them are pretty funny. And Oscar the Grouch, I've always enjoyed Oscar. He continuing to be a grouchy South elf man. Also, rip Carol Spinney. Moving on to number 3. I know these are 2 characters, but I'm counting them as one. It is Ernie and Bert. Performed by the wonderful Jim Henson and Frank Oz originally, and then Steve Whitmire took over for Ernie. Frank continued playing Bert until like the early 2000s, and then Eric Jacobson took over. And now I think it's Eric Jacobson, and I don't know who plays Ernie now, but it's not Steve Whitmire anymore, which is unfortunate. Steve Whitmire, if you don't know, he took over for both Kermit and Ernie. He took over for pretty much most of Jim Henson's characters. So I was originally going to put Bert and Ernie as number 1 on the list, but then I decided, you know what? I think there's like 2 other characters that are better than them. The reason why I've always enjoyed Bert and Ernie, I'm gonna make this real quick as I can, just because, you know, they're opposites of each other, and that's what makes Bert and Ernie work. One, Ernie, you know, he's loud, he's fun, and you know, he always wants to have a good time. While Bert, on the other hand, you know, he's very boring, he's very quiet. You know, that's why you usually see Bert doing having really boring hobbies, while Ernie's hobbies tend to be a little out of hand at times, a little random, but you know what? They can be fun. And that's what makes Bert and Ernie work so well. If you guys want me to, I can do a better video talking about Bert and Ernie. So yeah, let me know in the comments below if you're interested in seeing that. Moving on to number 2, we've got Cookie Monster. I apologize if it keeps snapping my fingers. Again, my cat's driving me insane. So if you remember the BuzzFeed video I did with the Sesame Street and the Muppet characters, I did one for Sesame Street 2, and I ended up getting the Cookie Monster, which is, again, pretty accurate considering the fact that he's got a big appetite, and so do I. Cookie Monster, performed by the legendary Frank Oz, who's behind many different Muppet characters, including Bert, Cookie Monster, of course, and then on the Muppets, he's known for playing Miss Piggy. I know that surprises a lot of people, actually, that Miss Piggy's played by a man. Fozzie Bear, you know, Yoda on Star Wars, Animal, Sam the Eagle, and he also plays the next character that my number one character, which you're gonna see here in a minute. Cookie Monster, he's always been kind of like a comic relief. He's always funny whenever he's on camera. I've always enjoyed him. Again, he's got a big appetite, and so do I. And Cookie Monster and I both have one thing in common, is that is we need to figure out how to lose weight. Not calling the man fat or anything. Favorite Cookie Monster sketch? This is actually my favorite Cookie Monster song. It's kind of like he does like a rap about healthy foods, like healthy foods. I don't remember how the rap goes, but I don't remember how the song goes, but it's really charming. Or I don't know why I keep saying charming, but but the beat's really catchy. The lyrics are very catchy, and Cookie Monster, I guess they give him dreads, so they kind of make him look like Snoop Dogg in the song, which is pretty cool. And moving on to number one, I've got Grover. Yes, I have Grover as my number one Sesame Street character. I know some people were probably thinking, oh, you're gonna put like Elmo or Big Bird or Zoe or whatever on here. No, I don't mind Elmo. He's a tolerable character. Big Bird, he's okay, but he's not my favorite. And then Zoe, well, she's pretty much the female version of Elmo. Grover, on the other hand, this is probably the Muppet I probably relate to the most. He can be smart at times. I can be smart at times. There are times where he can be, you know, a little bit, you know, a little dumb at times. I can be dumb at times. There are times where he has to ask for help. I have to ask for help. And then usually, whenever he's seen, you know, during sketches where he's seen as kind of like a leader, that's another thing too I like about Kermit. He's a leader. I've always tried to be a leader, but whenever Grover tries to be a leader, though, he doesn't. Sometimes he doesn't really succeed. Like if he's got his ego, is usually so big he has his head up his butt. You know, he's got his head up his rear end, so most of the time he thinks, you know, he's in the right and everything. And most of the time, I don't know why I said sometimes, most of the time it usually goes bad for him. Overall, Grover, he's a great character. I've always loved him. I love him. He probably loves you. Sorry, this isn't Barney. Definitely my number one favorite Sesame Street pal. And that does it for my top 10 Sesame Street characters. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, comment down below again if I missed your favorite Muppet characters from Sesame Street. Let me know in the comments who's your favorite characters from Sesame Street. And with that out of the way, I'll see you guys next time.